Yesterday, I remarked that when they're told to go into the ark, God says to Noach, you and your sons and your wife and your sons' wives, and that order is peculiar, and they go in that way. And then at 39, it says to come out, he says you and your wife, son and your sons' wives, which is the normal order. But when they come out, they don't do that. Noach went forth and his sons, wife and his sons' wives. So the moral was that when they're going in, they're supposed to go in men and women separate, so there'll be no reproduction. The world is being destroyed. After the flood is over and they're coming out, then they are given an indication, a clear indication that now it's time to repopulate the earth, and they refuse to do it. They remain separate. Okay, the bottom of page 39. Noach built an altar and offered sacrifices. I'm skipping over a lot of stuff. I want just the idea of repopulating. Hashem smelled the pleasing aroma. Hashem said in his heart, here's the crucial thing, he said in his heart, this is a private meditation of God, not something that he communicated to anyone. He said in his heart, I will not continue to curse again the ground because of man, since the imagery of man's heart is evil from his youth, nor will I continue to smite every living being as I have done. Continuously, all the days of the earth, seed time and harvest, cold and heat, summer, winter, day and night shall not cease. From now on, no overall interruptions in the course of nature, which implies that during the flood there was an interruption in the course of nature. It was not day and night, seed time and harvest, it was not cold and heat, it was an interruption in the course of nature. But that's not going to happen again. This God says to himself. Now, God blessed Noach and his sons. He said to them, be fruitful and multiply and fill the land. That's a blessing. The end of the paragraph, verse 7, and you be fruitful and multiply, teem on the earth and multiply on it. That's an instruction. Now, it's not a hint anymore. It's a blessing and an instruction. Now, a crucial piece of text. 8 starts, and God said to Noach and to his sons with him, saying. Who was speaking before that? From verse 1 on, who was speaking? Who was speaking in verse 1? Chapter 9, verse 1. It doesn't say God. The first word is God, right? First one, God blessed Noach and his sons, and he said to them. 8 says, and God said to Noach and his sons. What does that tell you?
They didn't listen. Then there was an interruption.
There's an interruption. You're going further. You're explaining what's happening, right? But there's an interruption. It's not one long, continuous speech. If X is speaking, X said, A, B, C, D, E, and X said, P, Q, R, S, T, then it wasn't one long speech. If you repeat and X said, there must have been a break in between. The challenge to the reader, and this happens over and over again in the Tanakh, in the Torah and in the prophets, happens over and over again. Challenge to the reader is, okay, there was a speech, and then there was a break, and then there was another speech. What happened in the break? Did something happen in the break to motivate the progress from the first speech to the second speech? That's what has to be. Now, we saw that when they left the ark, they didn't go out together. Now God is addressing that with a blessing and an instruction to get together, be fruitful and multiply. Then there's a break. Now comes a new speech. Let's see if we can figure out the relevance of this new speech to the same problem. And God said to Noach and his sons with him, saying, as for me, behold, I establish my covenant with you, your offspring after you, and every living being that is with you, birds, animals, beasts of the land with you, all departed from the ark, beasts of the land. I confirm my covenant with you. Never again shall all flesh be cut off by the waters of the flood. Never again shall be a flood to destroy the earth. This is what we read God said in his heart to himself without communicating it. Now he's communicating it. Could that be relevant to the question of getting back together and repopulating the earth? So the relevance is brought out by a midrash, which will be confirmed at the bottom of the page. Why didn't they do it? God gave them a hint. God gave them a blessing. God gave them an instruction, and they didn't do it. Because they said it's futile. It's futile. The two whom you created directly, Adam and Chava, the first two people, their descendants ended up in a gigantic destruction. It's going to happen again. There's no reason whatsoever to think that our descendants are going to be any better than the descendants who came from the beginning. It's a hopeless task. You tried the experiment failed, there's no point in trying the experiment again. That's why they're refusing to carry it out. So God says, I promise you it won't happen. I promise you it won't happen. That's up to the end of 11. 12, and God said, so there was a pause. Why was there a pause? To see whether they'll do it. And they still don't do it. So now comes the third move, or fourth move, depending on how you're counting. The next move to try to resolve the problem. God said, this is the sign of the covenant that I give between me and you, and every living thing that is with you, generations forever. I've set my rainbow in the cloud. It shall be a sign of the covenant between me and the earth, and it shall happen when I place a cloud over the earth, the bow shall be seen in the cloud. I'll remember my covenant between me and you, every living being with all flesh. The water shall never again become a flood to destroy all flesh. The bow shall be in the cloud. I'll look upon it to remember the everlasting covenant between God and every living being with all flesh on the earth. All of that, I mean, I'm skipping over lots and lots of subtleties and details. But all of that is, okay, I promised you it's not going to happen. I now promise you a sign, a visible sign, that there won't be another flood. That's the third move. 17 starts, and God said, so there means a pause. He's still waiting to see whether they'll do it or not. God said to Noach, this is the sign of the covenant. He now shows him a rainbow. I'll prove all of this to you. He now shows him a sign of the rainbow. This is the sign of the covenant that I've confirmed between me and all flesh upon the earth. And now, what's the result? The sons of Noach who came out of the ark with Shem, Cham, and Yafis, Ham, the father of Canaan. These three are the sons of Noach, and from these three the whole world was spread out. Now they comply. Now they comply. This teaches a very profound lesson of psychology. This is a cornerstone of Jewish psychology. They had a hint, they had a blessing, they had an instruction, they had a promise that there won't be another disaster. They were promised a sign that there won't be another disaster. All of that wasn't enough. They saw the sign, and that did it. That did it. You're hearing this from God, direct. It's not enough. It's not enough. Seeing it did it. The message psychologically here is an experience can change a person in a way that mere knowledge does not. Knowledge without any doubts, knowledge without any worries or inconsistencies. Pure knowledge, certain knowledge might not move a person. Whereas an experience will move a person. I have a bunch of other examples of it. We'll look at them in Yitzhak Hashem. But that's the lesson here. It's a little bit like a smoker goes to the doctor and says to him, your left lung is shot. You've got to stop this. If he shows him an x-ray of the lung and he sees the black on the x-ray, that will have an effect on him that merely being told in words will not. Not because he doubts the doctor's words. He knows the doctor's right, but seeing black on the lung has an effect on a person. This is telling us that experience is crucial in having an effect on a person. Are you with me? Now, let's pick up some of the details to show you that what I said is correct. 17, the commentators say, this is the sign. He showed it to him. He showed it to him in the sky, visibly. Because the word this is a demonstrative. If I say this is the book, or this is the tree, or this is the house, it's got to be there to point to. Otherwise, I can't say this. That's a natural thought. Suppose the critic says, excuse me, Rabbi, but look at verse 12. Does verse 12 also say this is the sign? The same words, this is the sign. Why do you tell me that in 17 he showed it to him and in 12 he didn't? Yeah.
Because this is just setting up what's about to come. Like this, what I will tell you momentarily.
Good for you. Good for you. Suppose I'm sending someone a recipe. And I say, this is the recipe for biscuits. Take 2 cups of flour and then take a cup of sugar and so forth and so on. What does this refer to? It refers to the coming text on the page. This is the recipe for biscuits. And then I say, take the flour and so forth and so on. The word this refers to the coming words. That's what's happening in 12. This is the sign of the covenant. The listener says, yeah, what's that? What is the sign of the covenant? You know what it is? I've set my rainbow in the cloud. The word this in 12 refers to verse 13. There's no reason to say there that he saw the rainbow. But in 17, the word this does nothing. This is the sign. So in 17, he showed it to them. That's how you confirm that idea. Yeah.
But then, can't you also say that the this in 17 can just be referring to what God already said in verse 13?
But then
saying
it's saying the same thing over again.
Yeah, why can't it be saying the same? Like you send the recipe for biscuits, and at the very end you say, "This is the recipe for biscuits."
Yeah, you could do that.
What I've already told you.
You could do that, but if there's a break is looking for a response, and then you're addressing the fact that there's no response. So you're taking another step. In every case where there's a break, it's another step. It's a step to another mission. Now tell me something. There was no rainbow in the sky until now. Does that mean the laws of physics have to change? We know from physics what makes rainbows. Right? The light enters the drop of water. It's reflected from the back surface of the drop of water, comes out the front surface, and is refracted into the different colors. That's why when you see a rainbow, where's the sun? Always behind you. Because you're seeing the reflection back of the light. If you want to see a rainbow, turn your back to the sun. That's a fact of physics. Okay? So now, we know what makes rainbows. Could it be that God, sure, God could do anything. He could change the laws of physics. The Malbim says it's not necessary. Not necessary. The laws of physics were exactly the same, and there was never a rainbow seen until this time, because it always rained at night. If it rains at night, you don't see any rainbows. So you don't have to change the laws of physics. You just have to change the weather patterns. You don't have to change the laws of fundamental physics in order to explain why. Up until now, there were no rainbows, and now there started to be rainbows. Yeah.
But the rainbow doesn't necessarily. This doesn't incumbent upon the rain for there to be a rainbow. All you need is a puddle of water. So you can spray a hose and get a rainbow.
Well, not really. That's not a rainbow. There are other ways. A prism isn't a rainbow either, but a prism does show colors.
Right.
And by the way, I don't think it's water. I think it's oil on the water that does it. When in a puddle, I think it's really oil.
But even so, even if it rains at night, you sell the puddles the next day.
Well, maybe if it's oil, I don't think it's the water that does it. Right? And it's not a rainbow. A prism also gives you colors, but it's not a rainbow. Rainbow means something that happens when it's raining. Right? I'm not talking now about getting colors out of sunlight. Right? A prism can do that too. That doesn't make it into a rainbow. Yeah.
Even like that, it wasn't the nature changed from it raining at night.
I said the weather may have to change, but that's not a change in fundamental physics. It's a much lesser change. Yeah.
How do you explain that it always rained at night, and then now we start seeing the weather pattern change?
It requires some management of the way the world runs, but it doesn't require change in the fundamental laws of physics. Indeed, we have on record that at certain times, in Talmudic times, there were periods when it only rained at night. Indeed, only Wednesday night and Friday night. Okay, that's one thing. Now, I wanted to point out something else. On top of 43, this is over and over again, but I'm pointing it out here. The fourth line down in the text. Never again shall all flesh be cut off by the waters of the flood, and never again shall there be a flood destroy the earth. Now, first of all, that's dreadfully redundant. What of the phrase, the waters of the flood? I mean, that's what a flood is, right? Last time I checked, the flood was lots and lots of water. So why bother saying the waters of the flood? Here the translation is dead. The word that they translate as flood does not mean flood at all. The word that they're translating flood throughout the entire story is mabul. Mabul comes from a root which means to mix things up. I would put it in modern terms to entropize. to add entropy, to disorganize things. Any force that's destructive and disorganizes things could be a mabul. This happened to be a mabul of water. So God is making a double promise. He's saying there's never going to be another flood to destroy, and there won't be any other general destruction either. The correct translation would be, never again shall all flesh be cut off by the waters of the destruction, and never again shall there be a destruction other than water to destroy the earth. After all, that's what Noach needs. It would be little comfort for God to tell Noach, no more floods, but worldwide earthquakes, yes, and everything will die. Thanks a lot. My problem is that I think that the experiment of mankind is a failed experiment. You promise there won't be floods, but there could be worldwide earthquakes, so that you're not comforting me much. Promise isn't worth much. That's why he needs a double promise. And it is, in fact, a double promise.
What did you say about the word usage again of flood?
The word in Hebrew that the English translates as flood is mabul. Mabul doesn't mean flood. It has no relationship to water. Mabul comes from a root which means to disorganize things, a kind of destruction that leaves you with rubble, right? Now, it could be done through water, it could be done through volcanic eruption, it could be done through earthquake, it could be done in any number of ways, right? So when you talk about Meha Mabul, the waters of the Mabul, that makes a lot of sense. The waters of the destruction. In this case, the destruction took place through water. When God promises, he says there won't be any more waters of destruction, and there won't be any other kind of destruction either. And that's what Noach needs. He needs a promise that mankind is never going to be universally destroyed as it was this time. Yeah.
You said Noah needed a promise and then a sign. This who's Noah to say he needs this from Hashem.
I'm not quite sure what you're asking.
I don't understand. Noah's, it's like as if he's demanding stuff and he's refusing to do stuff that Hashem's asking.
Well, I think here we're walking a delicate line, and I was careful to leave room for your comment by walking a delicate line. He doesn't do it till he sees the rainbow. And I said, experience has an effect on a person that merely hearing words and understanding and knowledge doesn't have on a person. All that's correct. I didn't say that until he sees it, he can't do it. That I didn't say. That I didn't say.
He just would have felt more comfortable.
Right. I think there's a struggle going on here. He's afraid. He doesn't have the confidence. Could he overcome the fear? Maybe yes, maybe no. I'm not taking a stand on that question.
And the it that he's going to do it, what is that it that you're referring to?
The men and the women are going to get back together and they're going to repopulate the earth, which they refused to do the whole time. Okay? I want to show you other examples of this principle of needing experience to make something believable. Yeah, take a look on page 67. Here's another example of the same thing. Chapter 15. After these events, the word of Hashem came to Avram in a vision, saying, "Fear not, Avram, I'm a shield for you. Your reward is very great." Avram said, "My Lord, Hashem Elohim, what can you give me, seeing that I go childless? And the steward of my house is the Damascene Eliezer from Damascus." Then Avram said, which tells you that what? There was a gap, right? Avram speaks in 2, and then Avram speaks again in 3. So it was a gap. God doesn't answer him. Avram says, "See, to me you've given no offspring, and see, my steward inherits me." That triggers the response, the idea of inheriting. Suddenly the word of Hashem came to him, saying, "That one will not inherit you. Only he," I think should be in grammar, "that shall come forth from within you shall inherit you." Okay. And he, God, took him, Avram, outside and said, "Gaze now toward the heavens and count the stars if you are able to count them." And he, God, said, so there was a gap. And he, God, said to him, "So shall your offspring be." Now here's the scenario. Avram says to God, "I have no inheritor. This stranger is going to inherit me. I have no continuation." God says, Forget it. He's not going to inherit you. Only your own natural born son is going to inherit you. God takes him outside and he says, gaze now toward the heavens and count the stars. You're able to count them. Pause. What does Abraham do in the pause? He's counting the stars. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Of course, it's kind of hard if you've ever seen the Milky Way, which is awesome. If you haven't, you should invest in it. Go to a place where there are no lights and see the Milky Way. The trouble with counting the stars is you can't check off the ones you've already counted. They sort of meld and float together. Did I count that one? Did I count that one? I'm up to 100,977 for, right? Count the stars, God says. Okay, I'm counting. And he can't count them. There's a pause. Again, God says to him, so shall offspring be. Now, the Jewish critic says, what's going on here? God is promising Abraham children. And he's telling him they're going to be as numerous as the stars. Does Abraham know what the stars look like? You bet he wasn't living in downtown Tel Aviv. Every night he saw the stars. Why doesn't God speak to Abraham at noon and say to him, Abraham, you're going to have children like this. Remember what the stars looked like last night? You remember? Your children will be like that. What's the point of speaking to Abraham at night and telling him to try to count the stars when he can't count the stars? Telling him your children will be like that. Who needs this star show, this sky show? And if you tell me that Abraham's skeptical, that he's worried, that he doesn't really believe what God is telling him, how does counting the stars help? That gives you more evidence that it's really going to happen? Because he did it at night, told you to count the stars? So what? No, but God wants to have a double effect. He wants to have an effect in giving him the information, and he wants to have an effect on his feelings, his emotions, his confidence, his experience. That comes through experiencing something rather than just hearing it, even if you're hearing it direct from God and you have no doubts. Again, there's no doubts here because if he had doubts, seeing the stars isn't going to help with doubts. They're going to make it more confident, more likely to become true. But the important point here is that it has to have an effect on his experience. Are we together? Now I'll show you the granddaddy of these, where it's stated explicitly in one of the commentators called the Ramban, Nachmanides. Take a look at page 307. Chapter 4, Moses is at the burning bush. And God is telling him he's got to go down to Egypt to save the Jewish people. And Moses is saying, no, 1,000 times no. Okay, he wasn't quoting Shakespeare. But he was resisting and objecting in every way that he possibly could. And this is one of the objections that he raises. Moses responded and said, they will not believe me, the Jewish people, when I get to Egypt and tell them that God appeared to me and wants to save them. They will not believe me. They will not heed my voice. They will say, Hashem did not appear to you. They're not going to accept what I say. Hashem said to him, what is that in your hand? And he said, a staff. He said, cast it on the ground. And he cast it on the ground. It became a snake. Moses fled from it. Hashem said to Moses, stretch out your hand and grasp its tail. He stretched out his hand and grasped its tail tightly. It became a staff in his hand, in his palm. God speaks, so that they will believe that Hashem, God of their forefathers, appeared to you, the God of Abraham, God of Isaac, God of Jacob. Hashem said further to him, bring your hand into your bosom. And he brought his hand into his bosom. He took it out, held it, drew it, and behold, his hand was leprous, like snow. He said, return your hand to your bosom. He returned his hand to his bosom. He removed from his bosom. Behold, it returned to be like his flesh. God speaks. It shall be that if they do not believe you, do not heed the voice of the first sign, they will the voice of the second sign. And it shall be that if they do not believe even these two signs, and do not heed your voice, then you shall take the water from the water of the river, pour it out of the dry land, and the water that you take from the river shall become blood when it's on the dry land. End of what I want. Boys and girls, there's a problem with this sequence. There's a problem with this sequence. In logic, there's something missing here, or there's a gap here, or there's something that doesn't fit. Let's just run through it in summary again. God tells Moses to go down and tell the Jewish people that I've appeared to you and I'm going to take you out of Egypt. Moses says, they won't believe me. They won't believe me. God says, what's in your hand? Staff. Throw it down. Comes a snake. Picks it up. Becomes a staff. So they'll believe you. And furthermore, the hand, leprous, reverted to be flesh. That's so they'll believe you. And they don't believe that, when you get there, you'll take water from the river and pour it out, and it'll become blood. What's wrong here? The problem is that 6 weeks from now, I'm choosing that arbitrarily, 6 weeks from now when I get to Egypt and I tell them, they won't believe me. That's the problem. What's the solution? God does 2 of the miracles now in front of him in the wilderness. Why does he do that? What does that contribute to?
Moses' belief.
But you understand the problem? What should have happened is, God should have said to Moses, I hear your problem. You say when you go down 6 weeks from now and talk to the Jews, they're not going to, let me tell you, I'm going to give you some spectacular things to do when you get there. When you get there, you'll throw your staff down and become a snake. Psh, wow, that's going to be terrific. When you get there, you'll put your hand in your book, take it out of me, leprous. Wow, that's terrific. And if those 2 don't work when you get there, then when you get there, you'll take the water and pour it out, it'll become blood. Why does he do the first 2 in front of Moses now in the wilderness? You see, that's a good question. That's a Jewish question. Everything has to play a role. Everything has to have a purpose. If you could get away with the same thing without something that you put into the story, then you don't know what it's there for. You have a problem. Now, I want you to know, the rabbinic tradition says that God is punishing Moses for slandering the Jewish people. A snake is a symbol of slander from the Garden of Eden. Leprosy is a punishment for a certain type of slander. So that's why these 2 are being used. But you hear where the rabbinic tradition is coming from. The rabbinic tradition is not just giving you morals and telling you philosophy and just loading it on the text because the rabbis want to have something to say. The rabbinic tradition is facing a problem. Why did God do these miracles now? Now, the Nachmanides quotes the rabbinic tradition. And then he says, in addition, I would tell you that Moses' heart wasn't confident. Hearing it directly from God, Moses' heart wasn't confident. And he did those 2 in front of him in the wilderness to make his heart confident, and 2 was enough. 2 was enough. That's why he didn't do the 3rd one in the wilderness. Just told them that that one would be there. This is the granddaddy of this idea that experience has an effect on the emotions and could have an effect on behavior that mere knowledge does not. Even perfectly certain knowledge without any doubts or without any question. Now, let me just make contact with your lives. I'm sure you have experienced this, probably even yourselves, when you do something that you know is going to injure yourself. And you know that. For example, not studying for the exam till the night before. Well, you know you're going to get a worse grade. And you know from experience, and you berate yourself. You say, next exam period, I'm not going to do it anymore. I know I'm going to take three days beforehand and so on, and yet. Or you eat things you shouldn't eat, or drink things you shouldn't drink, or sniff things you shouldn't sniff, or inject things you shouldn't inject. I mean, there are people who do things that are, or you don't go to the dentist, or you don't get any exercise. You know very well that if you get exercise, your life will be better off, and you don't get any. I'm speaking as a person who exercises regularly, so I can say that without any problem whatsoever. People do things that are against their own interests, and it's not correct to say you're just hoping that you're going to beat the odds, and you don't really believe that it's going to happen. You know it's going to happen. People are capable of acting against their own best interest. Short-term, physical best interest. It's a certain type of irrationality. Aristotle stressed this as against Plato, what he called weakness of the will, such a gigantic subject of philosophy about which there isn't real clarity. But it's a phenomenon, and the Torah here is saying that the way that you deal with this is through experience. One way, anyway, is through experience. Experience can have an impact on the will, on the emotions, on behavior, that mere knowledge and understanding cannot. Okay? Okay. Now, I want to start a passage, which maybe between today and tomorrow we can finish or we can get close to. Take a look on page 145. This is a very famous passage. This is where Jacob has the dream of the ladder and the angels going up and down. It's 4 verses long, starts with verse 13, it ends with verse 15, verse 16. Let me read through it for you, and And I'm sorry, so the 12, the paragraph breaks. I should tell you, the paragraph breaks in English often have no relevance to the Hebrew text. If you look in the Hebrew text, you see it's one block of print. It doesn't have any breaks. I'll read it through, and I'm going to comment a little bit on the translations, and then we'll start to deal with it. So verse 12, he dreamt, that's Jacob, and behold, a ladder was set earthward, and its top reached heavenward. That translation is exactly correct, and it'll be very important. And behold, now the real translation should be here, agents of God. The word in Hebrew, malach, means agent, not messenger. If you have heard that translation, that's a mistake. Malachim don't just carry messages. They carry out what God wants carried out. Sometimes it's messages, sometimes it isn't.
It says angels.
I know, but angels of God is redundant. Angels, of course, are of God. So then you would understand why about to say of God. But the Hebrew doesn't say that. The word malach can refer to a person. In some places, malach is a person. So there's a malachim of God, which is not redundant at all. And the correct translation would be agents of God. We're ascending and descending on it. And behold, Hashem was standing over him, and he said, I am Hashem, God of Abraham, your father, God of Isaac. The ground upon which you are lying, to you I will give it, and to your descendants. Your offspring shall be as the dirt of the earth, not dust, but dirt. I would wager almost every time you read in the English translation of our text the word dust, it's wrong. It's dirt. If you think about it, pity the English translator. What's he going to do? Write dirt? Dirt is dirty. Like, it just sounds terrible. Dust is much worse than dirt. The whole planet lives on dirt. The earth is what supports vegetation, and everything that lives off the vegetation. Dust does nothing. The great American desert in the southwestern United States is called the Dust Bowl. It's called the Dust Bowl because next to nothing grows there. The word for dirt in Hebrew is afar. The word for dust is avak. Very, very rarely do you have avak. The correct translation is dirt. Okay, back to work. So now, your offspring shall be as the dirt of the earth. You'll spread out powerfully westward and eastward and northward and southward. All the families of the earth shall bless themselves by you and by your offspring. Behold, I am with you. I will guard you wherever you go. I will return you to this soil, for I will not forsake you until I have done what I have spoken about you, period. That's the end. 4 verses. Now, first of all, if you glance through the whole 4 verses, you'll see a word that appears over and over again. And it would be fair to wonder why the text repeats it. Maybe once it could be understood and appreciated, but it repeats over and over again, and it just seems to be useless. It doesn't communicate anything. Something which you could erase and lose no content. And this is a good test of understanding. If it seems to you you could erase a word and lose no content, that means you're missing something. What word am I referring to that repeats over and over again and could be erased without losing any content?
Behold.
How about behold? How many times does behold appear in this passage?
4.
4 times. Twice in 12. Beginning of 13 and beginning of 15. 4 times. Now behold is kind of call to attention. Pay attention! Okay, I'm paying attention. How many times in 4 verses do you have to tell me to pay attention? At the very least, the word behold signifies that the text that comes after it has a message by itself. It's not just backdrop for the coming text. You have to imagine, behold Q, end, and imagine there's nothing else. Then there would be a message from Q. Behold Q and behold R. Q would have to have a message. R would have to have a message. If there's nothing followed it, there'd be something to learn from it. That puts a responsibility on the interpreter that each piece of the text has to make sense on its own. Each thing that gets its own behold. So let's start with the first one. Let's see if we can do that one in the next 5 minutes. 12. Behold, a ladder was set earthward, and its top reached heavenward. Now I'm going to teach you this by setting up a critic. A thought and a critic, and then we'll see how to reply to the critic. I say, earthward. Earthward means towards the earth. See, it's earthward, towards the earth. If it's towards the earth, it can't be coming from the earth and going to the earth. It's coming from someplace else. The only other place in the context is heaven. The ladder is coming down from heaven to earth. That's what I say. What will the critics say? Read to the end of that first half of the sentence. Then it says, heavenward. Critic's going to say, hey, Rabbi, what about the word heavenward? Heavenward means toward the heaven. Don't play fast and loose with me. You're going to make earthward toward the earth, and heavenward's got to be toward the heaven. Can't be going both ways? Then you have nothing to say, Rabbi. So there's a contradiction in your text, and it doesn't mean anything. That's what the critic's going to say. It's fair. What the critic is doing is fair. You can't play fast and loose with the words. If earthward means towards the earth, and heavenward means towards the heaven. If you get a contradiction, then you're stuck. You have to deal with that. Now, look carefully at the two phrases, and you'll see that it's not a contradiction. Each phrase has a noun and a verb. The nouns aren't the same, and the verbs aren't the same. It's set versus reached. In earthward, it's set, and in heavenward, it's reached. And what are the nouns? The subjects?
The ladder and its top.
The ladder and the top. So here's how it breaks up. The ladder as a whole was set, put into place, earthward. You want to know how the ladder got where it is? It got there by being set earthward. That's why I made my comment that it was put in place by letting it down from heaven. Because the first phrase describes how it got set into position. That's the end of the first phrase. The second phrase indicates how big is it? How big is it? Once it's already set in place, where's its other end? Its other end reaches earth, to heavenward. You know, it's going up, and you see it disappear in the clouds. How far does it go? It's just like coming to a fork in the road. You say, which road goes to Tel Aviv? You're not talking about the road rolling along, the road moving. You want to know where the other end is. Which one has its other end to Tel Aviv? I want to get to Tel Aviv. So there's no conflict between them at all. And the comment that the earth was the ladder was put into place by coming down from heaven is correct. I've been saying this for 40 years, maybe 20 years ago. I noticed that Shamshul Hirsch, one of the great commentators, says it. So then I patted myself on the back and said, yeah, I got it right. Now, that's the end of this behold. What's the message? The message is that the earth, the ladder, links heaven and earth. The linkage is made by heaven. A human being doesn't have to initiate the linkage to heaven. God will initiate the linkage. We may have to respond in certain ways. But the linkage between heaven and earth is made by heaven. God set up the creation that he links to it. That's the message. And if the whole dream had stopped here, there would have been a message. Okay? Okay, we'll pick it up tomorrow in the session.